Hey there, thanks for tuning into Duckbricks. I'm Chris, and today we have for review not one, but two versions of Simba from The Lion King. Clearly, LEGO is doing a Lion King focus with the new Lion King prequel movie coming out pretty soon, and this is really cool because it's the first time they've kind of done a joint product release depicting the same character at two different scales with two different building styles. The closest thing that we get to stuff like this is with Speed Champions and Technic depicting the same car, but I think it's really cool how not only are these built out of very different styles and different sizes, but they're actually also built by the same exact designer who got a chance to provide some congruency between the two sets. And so, let's dive in today and take a look at two of the brand new LEGO Disney The Lion King sets, both focused on a buildable Simba. The original Lion King movie from Disney came out in 1994, meaning that in 2024 it is now the 30th anniversary of the Lion King movie, and with that LEGO's produced not one but two Lion King Simba focus sets, designed by the same exact designer but at wildly different price points. Here we have Simba, the Lion King cub, retailing for $20 US, and then over here we have the buildable Simba, which retails for $130 US. Both of these are pretty much supposed to release at around the same time, and for once, I actually think it's really interesting that LEGO has produced two basically different versions of the same exact model, completely different building techniques, completely different scales, to appeal one for kids and one for adults, which is kind of something I wish that LEGO would do more often. Obviously, they had the budget to do something like this because it is to celebrate the 30th anniversary of The Lion King, and while most of this review will be dedicated to taking a look at the building techniques and everything that the larger build has going on, I do want to actually start off with the smaller model because I actually feel like this one deserves a much closer look in and of itself. So Simba the Lion King cub is a very cute, small style of animal build which isn't perfect and definitely falls prey to some of the design fallacies of some of the other buildable LEGO animals that I've interacted with in the past, but I think is a reasonably good effort for a buildable Lion King type of build, especially because this is supposed to be aimed towards kids, which meant they couldn't really go super crazy on the building techniques. In terms of articulation, this actually has a lot more points of articulation than the larger one. Obviously, the head is mounted on a ball joint, so you can move the head up and down and side to side. You can have the ears flick back and forth, which is a nice touch, kind of allowing you to adjust the lion ears itself, which are printed on these 3x3 tile elements. The legs are mounted on mini ball joints or mixel joints, although unfortunately, much like some other LEGO animals that we got from LEGO Elves and some other LEGO themes, they have built it in a way that basically they act as pretty much just one single degree of rotation joints, much like if you were to attach the legs via Technic pins, you can only move the legs side to side and that is it. And obviously that's by intent. They wanted it to be easy to play with for kids, and kids do not like it when you have too many different articulation points. LEGO has done a ton of market research on this and figured that the best way is to limit articulation, especially when making a product made for younger children. Unfortunately, because of that, the posing does tend up to feel a little bit static. It basically kind of just looks like a larger version of like one of those special molded animals that LEGO does, but just with the articulation on the legs. And I do feel like it would have been so much more fun to be able to splay the legs out just a little bit to actually be able to put it in some more interesting poses, like crouched down or sitting all the way up or about to swat something. You just can't really get that sort of pose with the way that the current set is set up, and you really can only get it in a walking pose, which is what you can see here. Now, each of the individual paws can move as well, which is quite nice. I do like having that option to be able to tilt them back and forth, but again, it is just a tilting back and forth motion. They really tried to constrain the amount of movement you have on this build, and because of that, while it is fun to play with for kids, it does end up feeling a little bit static. Of course, you can actually move the tail around, and you do have different articulation points on the tail, rotating via a Technic pin as well as the standard LEGO tail element, which we got all the way back in the dinosaur theme, and for the older LEGO elephants from Orient Expedition, which is pretty much unchanged from then to now, but otherwise that's pretty much all the articulation you can expect in a set like this. Now the big question is, can you get this in a pose that's similar to the large-scale build? And the answer is kinda. I mean, you can kinda balance it on the back legs and the tail, and then let the front legs dangle straight down awkwardly, but honestly, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it because it just isn't the most dynamic to pose. Again, because you are so constrained in the way the legs are built, there isn't a ton that you can actually do with the model itself. Again though, that's not necessarily a bad thing. This model is primarily geared towards kids, and kids will be the ones building it, playing with it, enjoying it, and so while it is not necessarily something that I would really gravitate towards when I like these smaller scale Lego animals, I typically prefer when they have more points of articulation so you can actually get fun poses out of them, and they've done that in the past with smaller scale builds. This one just feels like it is very squarely positioned in the 4Kids market, and that is why it is as simplified as it is. That being said, I do want to call out some really nice recolors, especially if you want to use this set as a parts pack. We get a nice flame yellowish orange, or as Bionicle fans call it, Keat orange version of the Optimus Prime faceplate, which is a really great piece, and I'm glad they're putting it in more colors in different sets. Obviously, in addition to the ears, which we already mentioned, the eyes are 2 brand new prints on the 2x2 curved slope tile elements, so those are nice to get, although they are very, very constrained to just the Lion King. And overall, there's just a lot of really great flame yellowish orange pieces included in the set itself. When constructing the head, there are a couple of pieces that are not in the right color, and I think when viewed from the back, this is actually the roughest it's going to be because you've got pieces in orange, in brown, you have some light yellow, and just not really the right colors you would expect to see, but it is nice to see them recolor some of the pieces that really did matter, like a flame yellowish orange recolor of the brand new 2x2 plate with underside bar attachment, which was just introduced this year in January, and did actually appear in my best new parts of January 2024 list. Overall, this is a really great, solid build. Honestly, not the most impressive thing for me. It definitely feels like almost like a product of the past, like something you would see in 2017's Lego Elves or something along those lines. So I do feel like Lego could do better today, but then again, this is definitely just meant for play for kids, so there isn't that much else I can say. This does also include a little bit of, I guess, a beetle, as well as a ladybug, couple of ladybugs, a sausage, or maybe that's supposed to be a worm. I think the nougat sausage is actually supposed to represent a worm, which is really nice. Now that I look at it, that actually makes for a very good worm. And a snail, just all sorts of little insects that you would kind of see alongside the Lion King type of setting, which is just clearly extra budget left over. They had a little bit of wiggle room to play around with some extra parts for the $20 set, but I'm glad they included it. For $20, it feels actually pretty fair. There's not much else I could have asked for this scale of a buildable Lion King figure, and I'm just glad it's not $25. $20 feels okay to me. It's not the best value, and I feel like maybe $15 would have been better, but I honestly can't complain too much. Moving on to the larger model though, this is really the model I wanted to focus on primarily because this is honestly a masterpiece of engineering. The first thing I will say is that aside from the head rotating back and forth, this is pretty much a static figure. It obviously is not meant for play, it is purely meant for display, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Just want to call out that this is purely a display model, and you literally cannot do anything else with it. I guess you can sort of... No, you can't even open and close the jaw, so you really just can move the head side to side, and I guess you can swing the tail around on the back. But obviously, this version of Simba is meant for adult collectors for $130. This is built for the parents who grew up watching The Lion King or watching it with their siblings or their kids and just want a really nice, accurate display model for the creature, and I think this is an absolute win. Now, images of this first leaked in like February of last year, and even when I first saw those, I was really impressed and also wondering how they managed to accomplish all of the angles on the build. Because the closer you actually look at a build like this, the more you might notice that every little bit of detailing is mounted at a very slight angle. The back legs are not only angled out to the sides, but also angled sort of forwards a bit to allow the entire body to lean forwards. The front legs are mounted at very slight angles as well. Even the front leg attachment to the torso is at a different angle, not within the standard studs up Lego system. And the head itself allows you to make it feel like it has so much character and life to it because the way that you rotate it is on a diagonal ball joint where you actually just have the rotational motion but the entire thing is mounted at an upwards angle, allowing you to achieve all sorts of different expressions with just being able to rotate the head. Altogether, this is a masterpiece of a set. And I feel that whenever LEGO tries to attempt a build like this, like the big Chewbacca build, or Stitch, or Bowser from Super Mario, they're often hit or miss. Either they're a really big hit, and they turn out really well and they look fantastic, or they're a pretty big miss and they end up looking very uncanny and creepy. And the big difference there, I think, comes down to the eyes. I think if the eyes are not right on a buildable character like this, the eyes are the window to the soul. You know, that's what really tells you, is this an accurate depiction of the character? And I'm pleased to say that because they introduced a brand new print for the eyes on Simba, just very simply a print on the dish element, they really were able to capture not just the pupils, but also the light reflecting off of the eye, the larger kind of pupil behind it, and the iris, and even the eyebrows. Made out of two different elements. You have a car sort of rim element, as well as black sausages being used for the eyebrows themselves. And I think that was a really nice touch. Add to the fact that for the rest of the face, we get some pretty solid recolors, including the sword element in tan, which is a really nice piece to get for the actual whiskers. It looks so good there. And the head is phenomenally sculpted. When talking about the building techniques, we're actually going to start with the head here. And one thing that does really impress me is just how much they were able to pull out of shaping in terms of crazy different studs in the side building. The person who made this is a far more talented LEGO builder than me, because this is honestly one of the most impressive LEGO builds I've ever put together. The geometry of every single piece fitting together so perfectly, studs going forwards, backwards, left, right, up and down and at different angles, honestly blew my mind. And I'd recommend that even if you don't decide to purchase this set, check out the instructions if you want to learn more about LEGO building, because this really blew me away in terms of how it was built. One of my favorite details of the head are the ears, because you have the studs on the side detailing where you've actually got the black outline as well as the nougat interior, and they're all mounted at a very slight angle as well. There's just some absolutely crazy building techniques going on. The back of the ears are using the relatively new quarter dome elements introduced for the NASA space shuttle. It's just such a cool set to actually integrate all sorts of the cutting edge LEGO pieces, modern building techniques, studs going in every direction to allow this to really truly accomplish a very screen accurate rendition of Simba himself. But the head is not the only thing that's impressive about this build. Honestly, the part of the build that is probably the most standard is the body. The body itself is pretty much just using studs in the side pieces and some of the larger convex slope elements that we got for LEGO Star Wars back in 2002. Great to see those shapes still being used in the LEGO portfolio as things become really smoothed out. But when things get really impressive is when we get to the legs. You see, the part that really blew my mind, and LEGO's done this a couple of times before, but this one was really cool just how well it all fit together, are the front legs are actually mounted on two different mixel joints, but those, the mini ball joints, click on a perfect angle to not only make these be mounted at the perfect part on the ground, but also just gently angle outwards. It is so good. It's honestly so impressive that they were able to pull off this very specialized angle and have all of these wedge elements fit together perfectly. It's just so impressive to me, and I feel like I genuinely learned a lot when building this model. The way these sides of the legs are attached as well is a very simple technique. As you may see, it is literally just using Technic bars and then having these Technic pins be mounted at different places, but it's the way that it so cleanly fits together that makes this such an impressive build. All around the build itself, there are really good building techniques and parts usages to mount pieces on the sides and backwards and upside down. They made use of clip elements attached to the LEGO Monkey Kid 2021, I believe, 1x2 clip piece, which they used for the modular vehicles, but they're actually using it in this set to mount pieces upside down, which is really interesting. I've only really seen that technique being used in mocks made by really talented AFOLs, not in official LEGO sets, so it's really cool seeing them do stud reversal techniques using some of the newest pieces. And the same goes for the back legs, which again, the way the back legs are mounted is that you have a very tight geometry of hinge elements and clip elements being used in just the perfect configuration to be able to actually let you mount the legs at not just an angle compared to the body, but splayed outwards as well. Again, I can just keep on going, but you can get the point. This is a phenomenally built set. I really love the amount of detail they were able to pack into the build itself. It feels incredibly polished, incredibly good. There are very little complaints, very few complaints I have about the model itself. And I feel like anybody who is a fan of The Lion King, who is a fan of big display models, who's a fan of brick-built Lego characters, can get something out of this model. Now, to talk about the price, $130 is a lot to pay for a little statue of Simba, but it's honestly not that little. And what I will say is that this is very heavy. You can clearly tell a lot of pieces went into really just refining the sculpture and shaping of a model like this. And while it isn't for everyone, I certainly know there are tons of people who prefer having Lego to play with. Well, that's why there's a $20 version. If you want to play with the model and not display it, they made that version for you, and that's something I can really get behind. So while $130 is fairly steep, I do actually feel like it is fairly fair for this kind of model. It is truly an educational experience putting it together. I was blown away by the building techniques, and I would highly recommend just checking out the instructions and learning a few building techniques for yourself. That's all for this review of both Simbas, releasing on June 1st. Thank you to LEGO for sending me these for review. Of course, all the thoughts expressed have been my own, and definitely stay tuned for even more reviews coming very soon. Alright, and with that, we have summed up our look at these two brand new LEGO The Lion King sets. Let me know down in the comments, what do you think of the sets? Do you like them? Do you dislike them? Which one, if any, will you be picking up? And I hope you enjoyed this review. Be sure to like and subscribe for even more LEGO news, reviews, discussion, and analyses coming your way very soon, and bye for now.